Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. I'm Matthew Bruni, and joining me once again today is Glenn West. Glenn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Just getting a little downtime in this hot weather in New Orleans, and be back in Baton Rouge soon. But man, it's been a toasty one out there for sure. The last week or so, we've had a
Yeah.
lot of outdoors kind of events going on, so it's been rough.
Yeah,
What's
and
the Texas weather like right now? I know
it's
you're over in Texas.
the Texas weather is always different for me because Baton Rouge is, a little bit more humid and um but Texas, man, Dallas, and I'm in Dallas right now, so it's like
More dry heat.
yeah, just dry heat
Yeah,
out there. Went golfing and it was just like I was trying to stay in the car. I was like, "This is the only shade I got, man. This is,
yeah,
whew, it was tough." It took my
yeah.
body. My body had to recover from those 18 holes, to say
It's
the
getting
least.
to the point in New Orleans where not even the AC unit on full blast is really working. So uh, definitely kind of got to settle into your short warm weather clothes. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
exactly.
been.
And you were obviously out there at the Manning Passing Academy
Mhm.
over the weekend in Thibodeau, and got to see a lot of the top college quarterbacks, some great high school quarterbacks. Just what was that whole experience like for you? And just explain it to people who don't know what it is, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone the last couple of years, been lucky to go the last couple of years. Essentially, what it is, the Manning family, you're really the last 25, 26 years is, kind of taking a week in the middle of summer to uh, put on this camp essentially for all high school quarterbacks. And one of the interesting parts of it is they bring in some of the top college quarterbacks in the country as counselors, essentially, and teachers for these high school kids that want to just go out there and get better and try to improve their game a little bit over a 4 or 5 day span. So, yeah, it's a really cool event that they do. They do it in Thibodaux over at Nicholls State, which is, I mean, it's just really crazy just driving there. It takes an hour to get there from Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and it's just, man, it's just like in the middle of really nowhere where you have all of these like football royalty, Manning family just meeting and obviously, all these college quarterbacks who are, some of them are likely to go be future first round picks and stars in the NFL. I mean, it's a really cool kind of setting to kind of have. I think they had over 2,500 campers, this year, which was, up there with the most they've ever had, which was, yeah, we're really, really impressive that they're still able to get this kind of attraction, kind of 25 years in. But yeah, I mean, among the quarterbacks there, obviously Miles Brennan, LSU sent Miles Brennan. Alabama sent Bryce Young. Max Johnson was out there from Texas A&M. That was kind of an interesting story. Max and Miles are actually rooming together this week we're rooming together at Nicholls and for the camp, which was interesting. They talked about just getting back together and reminiscing about the last year, I guess, of that Orgeron era, and it was a lot of interesting stories back and forth. But yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the biggest things that I just wanted to know coming in was just kind of Miles Brennan's attitude towards the summer and towards this competition that's obviously going to be such a huge critical part of fall camp. And he's taking it like you would expect a fifth year, 6 year senior to take it, and he understands that he's going to be in a stingy quarterback battle with these guys, with Garrett Nussmeier, with Jaden Daniels, and they've obviously spent the last couple months getting to know each other a little bit better. Been working a lot with the receivers, and that's going to be kind of the identity of what they do kind of the next 3 or 4 weeks before fall camp starts, just about getting that connection back.
Yeah.
Obviously with guys like Kayshawn now getting back to full strength, you want to get that rapport back up with him as well. So some interesting things to take away from Brennan. And he just kind of talked about his kind of his last shot, to kind of essentially be the full-time starter at LSU for a season. And seems like he's got a lot of experience in his bag to kind of help him, and knows what he has to do in order to accomplish that.
Yeah. Miles Brennan, after talking to him, obviously we were all there for his like press conferences and media availability during the spring. He definitely seems like the kind of guy who's like like, no, this is it. Like, he's very open about, like, I really want this job and I'm ready to compete for this job, and it kind of just feels like it's overdue for him, at least in his mind, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what makes it so interesting in that, to me, and I think to a lot of people, it still is a competition of
Hmm.
sorts, that it's not guaranteed that it's his job. And I think for him, that competition is just kind of ingrained in him at this point, and it's so fascinating to watch him just be like he says all the right things every single time. It's like, it's competition. I have to do this, this, and this. I have to get better at this. Like, it's all the right things to say, but you can just tell in his mind. It's like, okay, this isn't a freshman competing for the job. This isn't a sophomore competing for the job. This is his only chance to play, at LSU pretty much. And if not, it's like if you can feel like it feels like it's something that's going to eat at him if not. And so that's what the fascinating part to me is he's just been so honest and so upfront and so kind of, I don't want to say authentic because everything's kind of coach speak at some level, but still it's
Matter
been
of fact,
very.
he's been very matter of fact that this is his
Yes.
last
Yes,
opportunity. So,
that's a great way of putting it. That's a great way of
um,
putting it. So, yeah, I think, the Miles Brennan angle of this offseason has been so fascinating because it's not just about him competing for the job, it's about him, like, well, damn, he could have entered the transfer portal and gone, anywhere
anywhere.
to play football, Tulane or Oklahoma State, and, he could have gone anywhere to play. Instead, he's back at LSU and at one of the better quarterback rooms in the country, and now he's not gonna get handed the job. So how will he handle that? I think that's just a real interesting angle.
Yeah, no, I just kind of to piggyback off that, he's really the only quarterback that has kind of gone through a coaching change, has gone through just a lot of the offseason chaos that has kind of come with this year. He's played for at least four different offensive coordinators in his 5 years here, and now he's obviously welcoming Den Brock and Joe Sloan. And we asked him about the two coordinators, and he said, "Look, I mean, these guys are as on point and as dedicated, know what they're doing as anybody that he's ever worked with before at LSU." And yeah, Joe Sloan obviously is a guy who's, as far as assistant coaches go, probably has garnered a lot of the offseason attention just in the way that he's been able to recruit so far, build those relationships, and um, yeah, I think he's carried that onto the field as well. Miles talked about just how energetic he is, how fiery he is as a coach, and how hands-on he is as a coach, and that's something he really appreciates. At this stage in his career, when he kind of realizes that this is his last, opportunity to really make a big change or make a big difference here at LSU. And I think you just got to respect the way that a guy like Brennan's kind of carried it. In the way of the era of the transfer portal. You've got talented quarterbacks that are leaving, at the first signs of trouble. And, I think Brennan has really, attacked that head on throughout his career. Has really made that kind of the genesis of what he's about. And, it'll be interesting. I mean, I know that they really like Nussmeier, they really like Daniels, and they really like Brennan. And I'm with you. I think this is going to be a three quarterback race. And whichever one comes in with the most momentum, whichever one is able to thrive on that opportunity early in camp, I think is going to deserve the job.
Yeah, let's go from talking about six-year quarterbacks to quarterbacks who have not even enrolled or aren't even in their senior year of high school. Um, I mean, the 2023 class prediction that I put out has a lot. I mean, we talked about it beforehand. It had a lot of, interest, talking points, and that's what will happen anytime there is a class prediction piece and you don't want to just, half-ass it. So yeah, try to put a lot of time into it and try to get it as right as possible. Obviously, plenty will change over the coming weeks, and I know Sonny will have his out next week, so be on the lookout for that.
Yep.
But let's start with the quarterback position here because it's been fascinating to watch Dante Moore, and you are very plugged into recruiting, as am I, and as is Sonny. And it's been a two-man race. It feels like, at least that's from what Wilt Fong's been saying. What Sonny's been saying with Oregon and LSU. It looks, Wilt Fong put in a crystal ball to Oregon. It looks like Oregon's in the lead right now. What's your take on the Dante Moore situation here?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be probably leaning that way. I mean, Dante Moore was just on campus, and he's been posting a lot of social media stuff and Oregon gear. I think he was on campus this last weekend, or
Mhm.
within the last week, he's been on their campus again. And usually that's a good indication of kind of where things stand. He hasn't officially come out and announced a commitment date. I mean, I guess that's assuming that he could do it really at any time. So I mean, if he's if you told me he's going to make a commitment here in the next day or two or a week or so, I would say absolutely Oregon's probably the favorite right now. But I think the fact that he hasn't put out that commitment date yet probably also leads you to believe that he's still thinking about his options. And I do think that LSU is still going to continue to push. Obviously, the relationship with Sloan is huge. Relationship with Coach Kelly is huge. Coach Kelly obviously recruited him heavily at Notre Dame as well. So kind of have that experience level in terms of recruiting. So yeah, I mean, I do think that it's still up for discussion, in terms of where he's going to be. LSU, I also kind of feel like that, if LSU doesn't hit on the top tier quarterback this year, they're not necessarily in a do or die situation here. I think they have some good fallback options. I think they have obviously a really great young core with Nussmeier and Howard, that you're going to have on campus for the next 2 or 3 years. So if you don't land a guy like Moore, it's not the end of the world. I think you can shift focus to the next recruiting class, and obviously make your pitch to a guy like maybe Ricky Collins, a local kid who's obviously a Purdue commit right now, but I think LSU really likes and wouldn't be a fallback option. He's still a very good quarterback. He's going to be performing in the Elite 11 finals and all that good stuff. So he's very talented, and we got to see him recently. But yeah, I mean, if you lose out on more, all hope is not lost. I think is kind of my big takeaway.
I agree completely. I mean, especially with what you feel like is a good young core in Walker Howard and Garrett Nussmeier, like this, you should be in theory set for 3 years, right? At
Right.
least. And so obviously you want Dante Moore. You would love a top 5, 6 quarterback in the class every single year. But I think with this staff still being fresh and still building relationships, I'm not saying that that's why they're not getting Dante Moore, but or that's why they might not get Dante Moore, but it is a factor here where they haven't established LSU in a lot of players' minds. It feels like for this 2023 class, and yeah, so I definitely think if they don't get more, you go after Collins, and I've mentioned Avery Johnson as well as a quarterback from Kansas that we've heard at least something about, and that's really all we've done. So I agree with you. There's a camp that says you have to get quarterbacks, every single one. I think with the transfer portal, I just don't think you have to reach if you don't want to. And I think that's the situation LSU is in. If they don't get more, it's like, okay, you can go after Collins, and I think it'd be a good get, just like you. But at the same time, if Collins wants to stay with Purdue, I don't think you need to reach much farther past, his level of quarterback, just to get a quarterback on here. I don't think that's necessary. So,
No, I agree.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there any other as we look through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
projection
So
piece?
I think, kind of as we were looking through it, we kind of discussed a little bit before we hopped on the pod, but obviously you spent a lot of time on this. I think, Kyle Parker, obviously the receiver, is a guy that you projected to LSU in your projection piece. And I think lo and behold, 24, 40 hours later, he was a commit. So, we could talk about a little bit of the receivers. Obviously, Shelton Sampson's going to be the number one priority, I think, for LSU. But offensive line as well is going to be huge this year. I think you put in 5 or 6 different offensive linemen. Just, I guess, kind of talk about the receiver O line, kind of group there that you really like, and what you like about the potential of that class that you put out.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Shelton Sampson and Kyle Parker as a 1-2, you feel really good about that. And then I think they would look for a third, just, looking at it. And obviously, there's tons of guys you could throw out there. Malik Benson's probably not going to LSU, which would be a huge get as well. But you throw that name out there, you throw a name like Kai Preen out there, and you kind of go down the list. But it starts with Sampson and Parker. If you get those two, you can fill in the third receiver spot from there. I feel um, obviously I liked where they were at with Kyle Parker, and then Shelton Sampson is the guy. Like they need Shelton Sampson. I think in this class more than anything. They need him. Offensive line was interesting because I put 6 in there, and that didn't include Cole Dellinger, who, is a name who maybe's gone up and down at
Yeah.
times, so we'll see how that works out. He did camp with LSU, so but you have to look at the guys that did camp, in Tyree Adams, Jalen Hurd,
We're
Paris
hearing a lot of good
Patterson.
things about Zalen's Hurd
Yeah.
out of their camp. They loved Zalen's Hurd. They loved the fact that he was so game and being able to camp and obviously be a part of that, that the visit, over that weekend as well. So I think they feel like they're in a really good spot with him as well. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I think they need probably 5. I mean, the way Brad Davis has recruited at the offensive line level, it looks like the 6 names I put in, I could theoretically see them getting all 6. Now, will they get the all 6? No, or probably not. But, if they end up with 4 of these 5 and then they or 4 of these 6 and they plug in another one, they end up with 5, like, I think that's really good because all 5 of these or all 6 of these guys, I feel really good about. I saw Paris Patterson in person at camp, and I thought he was actually really impressive. I think he's a high 3-star, but, I mean, the offensive line is not something I'm worried about with this class just because Brad Davis has it feels like he's connected a lot. He has a real high batting percentage in terms of like when he gets these guys on camps, it feels like they leave like, okay, this is one of my top 2, top 3, top 4. That's just what I get the feeling of. And I don't know if that's because Brad Davis has been here for longer than the other coaches, but Brad Davis to me has done just a terrific job of not only getting these guys on campus, but getting inside of their top 3, top 4, whatever it is. So, I feel good about the offensive line that I put in there. Receiver, like we mentioned, I think it comes down to Sheldon Sampson now that you have Kyle Parker's.
Yeah, I mean, and just kind of, I guess, piggybacking on that a little bit. I mean, what I find so interesting about not only this class but the next class as well is that there's a different kind of restriction in terms of the fact that you don't have a limit this year
Yeah.
in terms of how many players you can bring into your class, which I think presents obviously some benefits, but also some challenges in terms of looking ahead at what you already have on the roster. Um, but if you really like 5 or 6 of those guys, I think you can feel comfortable with bringing all of them on. And then you obviously deal with what the current roster situation is after the season. So it's very interesting just in terms of what I remember we talked to Brian Polian back in the spring, and he talked about just man, the optimal outcome being exactly what this is, in terms of letting these colleges kind of catch up after the COVID year
Mhm.
and being able to get their rosters back on some manageable levels, and having that unlimited amount of recruits you can bring in as long as your roster remains at that 85 limit, is really going to help LSU, I think, in their case. So, yeah, just that was one thing I wanted to point out was just the numbers I don't think are going to be as stringent in terms of how many players from a specific position that they bring in. They're gonna bring in as many guys as they feel like can help their program either right away or in 1 or 2 years down the line. And I think that's a really kind of cool thing. And obviously with the transfer portal era as well, so many of these guys are entering the portal. You got to have a lot of these freshmen come in and be able to compete right away.
Yeah, just to kinda summarize it, I mean, because this is the projection I have is very offensive line and defense line heavy. I mean, you have 10 linemen between those 2 positions, position groups. 9 of them are 4 stars. I mean, if that's what ended up happening, obviously you'd take that in a heartbeat.
Right.
Um, just to summarize it, basically in the projection that I had put together, it's a top 10 class in all of the past 5 years. I mean, it's or a top it's number 6, number 8, number 7, 6, 9. And while it doesn't blow you away like on paper, like the only 5-star if you have Ricky Collins at quarterback is Sheldon Sampson. I think there's 19 4-stars I had on here. Like if you in the class with 19 24 stars and 1 5-star, you take that. Like that's
Yeah.
very, very good. That's a top 10 class in Brian Kelly's first year, and you're feeling pretty good about it moving forward. So, anything else on the 2023s or anything?
No, I mean, I think just the fact that they're really putting a lot of emphasis on out of state. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of been the trajectory of this class is that they're bringing in a lot of guys from out of state. Um, Not that they don't think they can't land some of these guys in state, but I do know that there's definitely an emphasis, in terms of getting those out of state kids in for visits and making sure that they're comfortable and really pursuing a lot of those guys. So, in terms of in state, I think Sampson and Zalance Hurd are kind of the big two that they're really going after. I think they would love to have a guy like Jordan Matthews. They'd love to have a Jaden Osbury.
There's just
Um,
been some hurdles.
yeah,
There's just been more hurdles in the in-state class, and that does come with not being, being a new staff. And that's, I think, eventually, and to me, obviously, this is kind of what separates LSU from a lot of places is the dominance they have over the state of Louisiana, like that they have had in years past. And so when you don't have that as, kind of a gateway, like when that's not something you have just in your back pocket no matter what, you have to kind of go out of state. And that this staff is so talented and has so much experience recruiting outside of the state of Louisiana because that's where, a lot of them come from. It's not a huge deal for them. I just think at the end of the day, it is going to probably come down to how much Louisiana talent can you keep here, because we've seen in the past that's kind of what separates LSU, at least in my opinion, just
yeah.
off of, I've only been here for a year, but that's kind of the difference. It's like Louisiana, LSU, you can go to New Orleans and get, a couple 5 stars here that are going to make the difference. And those are the guys that show up. And you can still get out of state guys, but the Louisiana talent to me is always the separator at times.
No, definitely hitting on that is the key, and I do think they have obviously the cream of the crop in terms of coaches who recruit this area very well. Frank Wilson, Cortez
Mhm.
Hankton, Brad Davis. Obviously, they all have Louisiana backgrounds in terms of their recruiting efforts, and that's part of the reason that I think you bring in coaches like that. And so it's gonna be very very interesting to see how that all plays out. Obviously, I mean, you don't have to hit on every 5 star in Louisiana. Just look at all the examples from past years: Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Jefferson. There's just so many guys that you can go down the list of like 3, 4 star guys that maybe kind of flew in under the radar but turned out to be superstars for you. So, yeah, I mean, I do think Louisiana is going to be the backbone of where this program continues to go. But it's nice to see that this staff is also branching out into a lot of different areas and making sure they kind of turn over every stone, I guess, is the
Yeah.
best way to put it.
Um, let's jump to baseball. Let's jump to
Sure.
baseball. This has been an interesting weekend for us and for you especially.
Tommy
Um,
Tanks.
LSU adds Christian Little from Vanderbilt, pitcher, and adds Tommy White from NC State, which I believe was the ACC Freshman of the Year this past
Yep.
year and a All ACC first team. I'll let you go on this, but just on paper, from what I've read, this is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's a big deal that Jay Johnson was able to bring in these 2 caliber players. Obviously, a SEC pitcher who has been a little bit up and down in his career in terms of Little, who has all the arm talent in the world, but just is kind of been struggling, I guess, with that consistency on a week to week basis. And obviously, I think you bring him in to be a weekend starter. Just looking at this staff right now, it's kind of hard to imagine he's not a weekend starter next year for this team.
He was a starter at Vanderbilt, or was
Yeah,
he
he was a
released?
starter to start the season at Vanderbilt, but he had some inconsistent issues, kind of much like Ty Floyd did last year. He kind of slid into a bullpen role for most of the season and kind of came alive, towards the end of the season for Vanderbilt. Had some really nice performances down the stretch for them. But I mean, fastball 95, 96 miles an hour, has some good off speed pitches as well. It's just about finding that consistency with him. But I have every belief that whoever Jay Johnson's going to bring in, they're going to be able to coach him up and develop him, and hopefully get this pitching staff back on a more just kind of college baseball trajectory of having a known starter on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that's kind of the goal of what they kind of need to start with in terms of finding guys like that. And Dylan T-Break is another guy from Creighton who fits into that mold. Gonna have to see what happens with him at the draft, but I think they're doing a nice job of rebuilding the staff from the pitcher side. But I mean, Tommy White's the big one here. I mean, he's a guy that obviously has future first round superstar potential all over him, and Not only did he break the ACC record for freshman home runs, he broke the NCAA record for freshman home runs with 27 last year, 74 RBIs. Was primarily a designated hitter for them. He did get a handful of starts at first, a handful of starts at third, which is kind of the interesting thing for me in terms of where they're going to place him out in the field. I think third base is probably the betting favorite for where he winds up. He struggled a little bit in the field when he had those opportunities, but much like the Jacob Berry thing, you gotta do whatever you can to get those kind of hitters on the board on your team and in that roster. And just I mean, much like Berry and Cruz last year, a Berry White or a Cruz White, 1-2 punch there with Morgan, and obviously, hopefully, maybe getting Davin Dudas back. And there's so many different offensive potentials. Josh Pearson you can throw into that mix as well.
Mhm.
Um, just so much offensive potential with that lineup next year, and you get the defense side handled a little bit better. This team should absolutely be competing for a trip to Omaha next year, and um, not only just competing, but being a host. Again, that's been a while since LSU's been a host. So yeah, two really huge pickups. Love the Tommy White addition, and yeah, it's going to be very interesting because they're not done yet, and I think there's some more coming down the pike
Yeah.
from what everything we've been hearing.
Yeah, no, definitely. They are definitely not done at this point. And it's interesting to add Tommy White. When you lose Jacob Berry, it does kind of feel like that nice little
Nice
substitute
trade
for
off there, and
yeah,
then the
nice
nice thing about White is too he also has 2 years of eligibility left.
exactly.
Barry came in and only had 1 year really before you felt like okay he's going off to the MLB. White, now you get to build a foundation of him, Pearson, Morgan, whatever guys they get back, in this freshman class, which is expected to be loaded
Hmm.
with their pitching staff and their freshman classes and their position players as well. You get to have a nice foundation there for when obviously Cruz is expected to be a high first round draft pick next year, but you get White for an extra year as well. So you get to kind of carry that offensive, baton into that next season, which is really a key thing I think for Jay as he kind of builds out his program here.
Yeah, let's jump to our final topic here. Real quick, the NBA draft happened on Thursday. Tar Eason went number 17 to the Rockets.
What'd you
Darius
think of that?
Day,
What'd you think of the suit? Was it a?
I thought it was great. I
You
thought it
thought it
was
was
great.
great?
I like the flamboyant colors.
My dad was looking for him throughout the entire broadcast. Whenever they did the little pan out
Yeah.
of the broadcast, he was always looking. Where's the green? Where's the green suit? Where's it? Where's he sitting?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely had his own flavor on it. I liked it. It's
yeah,
just good, for us obviously to, we've talked to Tari a lot this season in interviews and stuff, just to see him kind of go from an unknown guy at Cincinnati,
right.
transfer to LSU, and then like just take over, just explode onto the scene in the SEC, and just that growth, and hearing Will Wade talk about his work ethic and everything. So that was really cool, for us, just to see that growth. Kind of obviously fans see it, but we get to talk to him. That's kind of the part of this job, is that we get to pick their brain a bit more. And so to see his growth, mentally, and I think to see him come into that understanding, just be like, oh, I can do this. I can do that. Like I am capable of doing this, because at Cincinnati, he was very, underutilized. I probably wasn't nearly as good as he was at LSU, but still to see that growth at LSU would be like, oh, I can do this. Like I'm not just a, bench player here. I can come in here and be the sixth man of the year in the conference and get drafted and all this stuff. I mean, he's last year's team was very, very exciting to me, but he was the head of the snake, and that's
No,
what made it cool for me to see him go at number 17 to the Rockets, which I think is a pretty good fit. Obviously, I think I would have liked maybe to see him on a little bit more of an established team, maybe slide into a role, but the Rockets are rebuilding and they want to build their culture, and you had him and Jabari Smith, two SEC guys,
Ty Ty
and
Washington later in the first round as well.
Ty Washington. They went all SEC, and I think
Good pick.
between Eason and Smith, you had defense, obviously, and I think Tari's upside offensively is actually kind of slept on. So I think it's a
Absolutely. No, I
interesting.
think it was a great pickup. I think if you go back a year ago today and say, man, Eason's going to be the Tari Eason's going to be the highest drafted LSU player since Ben Simmons was back in 15. I'm not sure anybody would have believed you. I mean, they've had some really talented players come through this program the last several years, and I think it just speaks to how quickly Tari was able to pick up the system last year and how much of a an anchor he was, especially on defense for them. I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. He's got a wingspan that's close to 7 feet, I think, and um, I kind of like the fit in Houston. Honestly, I think the fact that he gets to go in there and be kind of the defensive anchor for that young team. There's going to be a lot of responsibility put on him, which I think is something he wants to embrace. So I think that's a very exciting young team out west, and I really like that pickup. And obviously, kind of moving through here, you had your Spurs with a nice little
Mhm.
summer camp
Y-
pickup for
Yeah, we came
Darius
through.
Days, 6'7" forward. Obviously, LSU guy that's been around for 4 years. Great player, great person to get to know a little bit, and really happy for Darius to get an opportunity somewhere. And really a San Antonio team that's been kind of known the last 20 years of being able to develop some under the radar talent. And Darius goes in there, has a nice summer camp, nice spring, nice summer, kind of ball experience with them. Might latch on with the team somewhere on a two-way. I think that's kind of the hope for him. And yeah, just what are your thoughts on Darius in San Antonio?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, San Antonio will have a lot of young players here, especially for those who don't know the summer league, the NBA summer league. I believe it starts July 5th, somewhere in
Six or
that.
seven, yeah, fifth, sixth,
Yes,
seventh, somewhere around there.
6, 7, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. And that for those LSU fans that want to see Darius and Tari play, I mean, immediately that's in 2 weeks, pretty much. So you'll be able to see them on ESPN, NBA TV, all that good stuff. I love watching the summer league, so I'm interested to watch Darius and Tari, but Darius kind of try to make his mark with the Spurs, and even if, like you said, even if it's not the Spurs that, if he has a good showing, even if it's not the Spurs that pick him up, there's 30 teams out there, who that need guys on two way, needs guys in the G League, and that's kind of how you get started. So the 3-point shooting is going to be it for him, obviously. I think he can defend at a high enough level, but if he can shoot the ball, at a 36+% clip, I mean, I think he has a good shot. So that's what I'm going to be interested in seeing. How's the
Ferocious,
3-point shot looking?
yeah,
And yeah.
ferocious rebounder and a high motor too. I mean that gets you a lot of places in the NBA in terms of just your effort and having a high motor and being able to get the ball and push it down the court a little bit. I think he's got all that potential in him. And it's like you said, just about getting that shot a little bit more consistent is going to be the big thing with him.
Yeah. Man, the last year's team was so interesting for us to cover, wasn't it, man? It just feels like it felt like they just, I don't want to say deserved. It felt like we should have gotten more than just one tournament game from them.
Yeah, LSU was like the worst shooting team that didn't feel like a bad shooting team. Like they took so many threes. They had so many guys thinking that they were so great at shooting threes, and they were not very good at shooting threes last year. And that was kind of a really big part of their offensive identity for much of the season. We had to talk with, I remember Coach Wade about just them holding it back a little bit, in terms of
Mhm.
the amount of threes they were taking. But you live and you learn. Obviously, it's a new age of LSU basketball, so we don't have to reminisce too much about the past. But yeah, I think that all great landing spots. Sharif going with the Lakers,
Yeah,
obviously
forgot about that.
another one there. Legacy opportunity for him to,
He'll be in the summer league as well.
yeah,
So for the Lakers.
for Lakers, yeah. So
All right.
good opportunity, yeah.
Yep, that's gonna be it for us today. We hope y'all enjoyed the episode. A little bit of everything in there, a little bit of Mannings, a little bit of
Hodgepodge,
recruiting,
that hodgepodge.
baseball, basketball.
Don't get
Got
to use
everything
that
for
word much.
y'all. Yeah, that's what the off season is, right? That's what June 26th brings every year.
Yep,
So,
that's true.
all right.
All right, guys.
For Glenn, I'm Matthew Bruni. We hope y'all enjoyed the episode. You can follow us on Twitter at Go247. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all later.